Blood splattered across the pristine observation deck. As Commander Kade Fletcher of the United Earth Alliance watched the galaxy's most feared warrior, General Drozak, unsheath his ceremonial vibro blade. The 20-foot Araxian towered over everyone in the diplomatic chamber, his 6 eyes narrowing to slits as he focused on Kade. "This is the blade that has severed the heads of 1,000 war chiefs across 7-star systems," Drozak growled, his voice amplified by the translation device strapped to his thorax. "The mere sight of it has caused entire planetary governments to surrender without a fight." The enormous curved weapon hummed with deadly energy, its edge glowing with a faint purple light that seemed to draw the oxygen from the room. The assembled alien diplomats gasped collectively and stepped back. Even Admiral Zhen, the stoic Centaurian representative, lowered his gaze in deference. Kade studied the weapon, tilting his head slightly. "I've seen worse at home." The chamber fell silent. Even the ship's environmental system seemed to pause in shock. Drozak's armored exoskeleton expanded as he drew in a massive breath. "You dare mock the honored blade of the Araxian Empire?" "Not mocking it," Kade replied, maintaining uncomfortable eye contact with the massive alien. "Just saying my cousin Rick has a bigger one he uses to clear brush on his property in Texas." The delegation erupted in whispers. No one had ever spoken to General Drozak with such casual disregard and lived to tell about it. "You will regret those words, human," Drozak snarled, his blade sweeping downward in a deadly arc toward Kade's head. What happened next would be recorded in diplomatic archives across 17-star systems. Kade didn't flinch. He didn't try to dodge. He simply raised his hand and caught the blade between his thumb and forefinger, stopping it cold. The shock on Drozak's face was evident even through his alien features. "Impossible," Kade shrugged. "Like I said, seen worse at home." That was 6 months ago. Now, as Kade sat in the medbay of the UEA starship Horizon, he wondered if he'd pushed his luck too far this time. His right arm was wrapped in regenerative bandages, the pain suppressors barely taking the edge off where Drozak's second-in-command had nearly severed it during what was supposed to be a peaceful cultural exchange. "You're an idiot, you know that, Doctor," Nathan Park said, checking the readings on the medical scanner. "The Araxians take their weapons very seriously. You're lucky to be alive." "It worked though, didn't it?" Kade replied, wincing as the doctor adjusted the bandage. "We got the peace treaty." "We got the treaty because you somehow convinced the most feared warrior in the galaxy that humans are either completely insane or possess powers beyond comprehension. Neither of which is entirely accurate." "Sometimes perception is more important than reality, Doc," the doctor sighed. "The nanobots should have your arm functional in about 3 days. Try not to antagonize any more alien warlords in the meantime." Kade stood up, testing his balance. The Horizon was scheduled to make contact with the Valerian Collective tomorrow, another potentially hostile alien faction that controlled a significant portion of the Outer Rim. His presence had been specifically requested after word of his encounter with Drozak had spread. As he left the medbay, his communicator beeped. Captain Nora Wells was requesting his presence on the bridge. He made his way through the sleek corridors of the Horizon, nodding to the crew members he passed. Most looked at him with a mixture of awe and concern. The man who had stared down General Drozak was now something of a legend. The bridge was a hive of activity when he arrived. Captain Wells stood at the command station, her attention focused on the main view screen where a strange spacecraft was visible. "Commander Fletcher, glad you could join us," she said without looking away from the screen. "We have a situation. Valerians arrive early." Kade asked, moving to stand beside her. No, that's not a Valerian ship. According to our database, it's Krivax. Kade's blood ran cold. The Krivax were known for one thing, hunting other species for sport. They weren't part of any interstellar alliance and generally avoided contact with developed worlds. They preferred to find isolated colonies where they could hunt without interference. What are they doing this far into regulated space? Kade asked. That's what we're trying to figure out, Wells replied. They're requesting to speak with you specifically. Me, why, they won't say. But they mentioned something about a challenge. Kade looked at the alien vessel. It was designed to resemble a predatory animal, with sharp angles and forward-swept wings that gave it the appearance of a bird of prey. Open a channel, he said. The view screen shifted to show the interior of the Krivax vessel. 3 Krivax warriors stood in formation, their chitinous exoskeletons covered in ceremonial markings. The central figure, clearly the leader, stepped forward. I am Hunt Master Grax of the Krivax, the alien said, its translator converting the clicks and hisses of its natural language into English. I seek the human who disgraced General Drozak. I'm Commander Kade Fletcher. I wouldn't say I disgraced the general. We came to an understanding. The Hunt Master's compound eyes glistened in the light of its ship. We have heard of your feats, human. The Araxians speak of you with fear. They say you possess strength beyond what your form suggests. Sometimes reputation can be exaggerated, Kade replied cautiously. We shall see. I challenge you to the Krivax hunt ritual. If you are as formidable as they claim, you will provide worthy sport. Captain Wells stepped forward. Commander Fletcher is an officer of the United Earth Alliance. He's not available for your hunting games. The Hunt Master ignored her. The challenge has been issued according to the ancient ways. If he refuses, we will consider it an acknowledgement of the weakness of all humans. We will then seek hunting grounds on human colonies. Kade felt a cold weight in his stomach. The Krivax were known to wipe out entire settlements during their hunts. If he refused, they would take it as permission to target human outposts. I accept your challenge, Kade said before Wells could object further. Excellent, Grax replied. You will be transported to the hunting ground at dawn. You may bring one weapon of your choosing. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Are you out of your mind? Wells demanded. The Krivax are apex predators. They've evolved specifically for hunting. I know what they are, Kade replied, and I know what they'll do if I don't accept. You caught Drozak off guard with a parlor trick, Kade. These are hunters. They won't be fooled so easily. Kade nodded. Then I'll have to find another way to survive. The next morning, Kade stood in the transporter room. He had chosen his weapon carefully, a standard-issue combat knife. It seemed woefully inadequate against what he would be facing, but anything larger would slow him down. The Krivax hunting ground is an artificial environment on their ship, Lieutenant Reyes explained, reviewing the data on his pad. It's designed to simulate different terrains. You'll have 12 hours to survive. If you make it, they'll consider the challenge met and will leave. And if I don't? Reyes didn't answer. He didn't need to. Captain Wells entered the transporter room, her face tight with concern. I've informed Earth Command of the situation. They're sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for at least 15 hours. By then, it'll be over one way or another, Kade said. We'll be monitoring your vital signs, Wells said. If things go south, we'll attempt an emergency extraction. Treaty violations be damned. Kade nodded his thanks. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The transporter activated, and Kade felt the familiar sensation of his molecules being disassembled. When he rematerialized, he found himself in a dense jungle environment. The air was hot and humid, filled with the sounds of alien wildlife. A voice boomed from hidden speakers. "The hunt begins now, human. Survive if you can." Kade immediately moved away from the transport site, knowing it would be the first place they'd look. His military training kicked in as he assessed his surroundings and considered his options. The Krivax were natural hunters with superior strength, speed, and senses. A direct confrontation would be suicide. He needed to use the environment to his advantage. Finding a stream, he waded through the water to mask his scent trail. The jungle provided cover, but also limited visibility. He needed to find higher ground to get a better view of the hunting area. After an hour of careful movement, Kade reached a rocky outcropping that offered a vantage point. From there, he could see that the artificial environment was roughly circular, about 2 miles in diameter, with different biomass blending into each other. The jungle gave way to a rocky desert on one side and a swampy area on the other. Movement caught his eye. 3 Krivax hunters were moving through the jungle below, following his trail. They were armed with long, serrated blades that gleamed in the artificial sunlight. Their exoskeletons provided natural armor, making them even more formidable. Kade moved back from the edge of the outcropping, considering his options. He couldn't outrun them, and he couldn't overpower them. But perhaps he could outsmart them. He remembered something from the briefing files on the Krivax. Their hunting culture was based on proving superiority through direct combat. They valued the trophy of a kill made with their ceremonial blades more than a kill made from a distance. It was a matter of honor. Kade formulated a plan. It was risky, but it played to human strengths rather than Krivax ones. He made his way down from the outcropping and headed toward the desert terrain. The open ground would make him more visible, but it would also allow him to see the hunters approaching. As he crossed into the desert, the temperature rose dramatically. The artificial sun beat down mercilessly, and Kade could feel sweat soaking his uniform. He found a collection of large boulders and began to prepare. Using his knife, he cut strips from his uniform jacket and tied them to small rocks. Then he placed these markers at specific points around the area, creating a rough perimeter. Each marker was placed to guide movement in a particular direction. When he was satisfied with his preparations, Kade made his way to the center of the boulder field and deliberately cut his palm with his knife. He let the blood drip onto the ground, ensuring a strong scent for the hunters to follow. Then he waited. It didn't take long. Within 20 minutes, Kade spotted the first Krivax hunter approaching from the direction of the jungle. The alien moved with predatory grace, its compound eyes scanning the terrain. When it caught the scent of blood, it moved more quickly toward the boulder field. Kade remained hidden behind one of the larger rocks, controlling his breathing. The hunter entered the field, following the trail of blood. When it reached the center, it paused, realizing the blood trail ended abruptly. That was when Kade sprang his trap. He emerged from hiding and threw one of his makeshift markers past the hunter. The movement drew the Krivax's attention, and it spun around, blade at the ready. "Is this how the galaxy's fiercest hunters operate?" Kade called out, following blood trails like common scavengers. The Krivax hissed in anger. "Your words mean nothing, human. Your death will bring honor to my clan." "If you can catch me," Kade replied, then ducked behind another boulder as the hunter charged. The Krivax was fast, but the narrow passages between the boulders forced it to slow down. Kade led it through the path he had marked, always staying just out of reach. The hunter's frustration grew with each near miss. What the Krivax didn't realize was that Kade was leading it in a specific pattern, one that brought them back toward the center of the boulder field. As they emerged into the small clearing where the blood trail had ended, Kade made his move. He feigned a stumble, going down on one knee. The hunter, seeing an opportunity, lunged forward with its blade. Kade rolled to the side at the last moment, and the Krivax's momentum carried it forward. Its foot landed on the loose rocks Kade had carefully arranged, causing it to lose balance. In that moment of vulnerability, Kade struck. He drove his combat knife into the joint where the exoskeleton was thinnest, between the thorax and abdomen. The Krivax let out a screech of pain and surprise. It wasn't a fatal wound, but it was debilitating. The hunter dropped to its knees, green ichor seeping from the wound. "Impossible," it hissed. "No human could defeat a Krivax in single combat." "I didn't defeat you with strength," Kade said, retrieving his knife. "I used the environment and your own aggression against you." Before the conversation could continue, Kade heard movement from outside the boulder field. The other hunters had heard their companion's cry and were converging on his position. He needed to move quickly. Taking the wounded hunter's blade, he retreated deeper into the desert terrain. The weapon was heavier than he expected, clearly designed for the Krivax's superior strength, but it would be more effective against their armor than his knife. The sun was beginning to set on the artificial environment, casting long shadows across the desert. Kade found a defensible position among a cluster of rock formations and prepared for the next encounter. He had survived the first hunter, but there were still two more, and they would be more cautious now. As darkness fell, Kade's situation became more precarious. The Krivax had excellent night vision, giving them an additional advantage. He needed to level the playing field somehow. In the distance, he could see the glow of the swamp biome. Bioluminescent plants provided ambient light there, which might help negate some of the Krivax's advantage. He decided to make his way toward it. Moving carefully from shadow to shadow, Kade crossed the desert terrain. He could sense the hunters tracking him, always just out of sight. They were being more methodical now, working together to corner their prey. Kade reached the edge of the swamp as the last light faded from the artificial sky. The ground became soft and treacherous, with pools of stagnant water between patches of solid ground. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the sounds of unseen creatures. He waded into the murky water, using the stolen Krivax blade to test the depth before each step. The bioluminescent plants cast an eerie blue-green glow over everything, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. Kade found a small island of relatively dry land in the middle of a large pool and climbed onto it. From this position, any approach would have to come through the water, creating noise and disturbance he could detect. He didn't have to wait long. The surface of the pool rippled as something large moved through the water. Kade gripped the Krivax blade, ready for the attack. But it didn't come from the water. A shadow detached itself from the canopy above, dropping silently toward him. Kade rolled away just as a Krivax hunter landed where he had been standing, its blade embedding in the soft ground. Kade slashed with his stolen weapon, catching the hunter across its armored chest. The blade scraped against the exoskeleton, but didn't penetrate. The Krivax responded with a lightning-fast strike that Kade barely avoided. "You fight well for prey," the hunter said, circling Kade on the small island. "But you cannot win." "I don't need to win," Kade replied, maintaining his defensive stance. "I just need to survive." The Krivax attacked again, its movements a blur. Kade defended as best he could, but the hunter's superior speed and strength were overwhelming. A glancing blow caught his left shoulder, opening a deep gash that immediately began to bleed. Kade stumbled backward, nearly falling into the pool. The pain was intense, but he forced himself to focus. He couldn't match the Krivax in direct combat. He needed another approach. The hunter advanced, confident in its advantage. "Your blood calls to me, human. Your death is near." Kade noticed movement in the water behind the Krivax. The third hunter was approaching. He was about to be caught between them with nowhere to escape. In desperation, Kade did something unexpected. He threw the Krivax blade directly at the hunter in front of him. The alien easily deflected it, but the distraction gave Kade the moment he needed. He launched himself forward, tackling the surprised hunter into the pool. The water was deeper than it appeared, and they both went under. The Krivax was stronger, but its armored exoskeleton made it less buoyant. Kade used this to his advantage, wrestling the alien deeper into the murky water. The Krivax fought fiercely, its clawed hands tearing at Kade's uniform and flesh. Underwater, Kade couldn't see clearly, but he could feel the alien's movements. He located the same vulnerable joint where he had wounded the first hunter and drove his combat knife deep into it. The Krivax convulsed in pain, releasing a cloud of green ichor into the water. Kade pushed away from the wounded alien and swam toward the surface. As his head broke the water, he gasped for air, his lungs burning. The third hunter was waiting on the island, blade ready. Kade was wounded, exhausted, and now unarmed, having lost his knife in the underwater struggle. "Impressive," the Krivax said. "You have earned a quick death." Before the hunter could strike, the water erupted behind Kade. The wounded Krivax emerged, its compound eyes blazing with fury. But instead of attacking Kade, it lunged at the other hunter. "The human is mine to kill," it snarled. The two Krivax clashed, their blades creating sparks in the dim light of the swamp. Kade used the distraction to pull himself onto a different part of the island, away from the fighting aliens. The duel was brief and brutal. The unwounded hunter quickly gained the advantage, driving its blade through its companion's thorax. The wounded Krivax collapsed, its life fluid seeping into the soft ground. The victorious hunter turned to Kade. "Now, human, now we finish this." Kade was in no condition to fight. His shoulder wound was bleeding freely, and he had suffered numerous other injuries during the underwater struggle. But he wasn't ready to give up. "Before you kill me," Kade said, "I want to know something. Why did he attack you?" "That's not part of your hunting code, is it?" The Krivax paused. "He broke the code by claiming you as his exclusive kill. The hunt is shared among all participants. So your hunting culture has rules. Honor. Of course, without rules we would be mere animals." Kade nodded. "Then you should know I've already met the terms of the challenge." The hunter tilted its head in confusion. "What do you mean?" "The challenge was to survive 12 hours. Look at the sky." The artificial dawn was breaking over the hunting ground, casting a pale light across the swamp. The Krivax checked some kind of device on its armor, then hissed in frustration. 11 hours and 58 minutes, it said. "You are 2 minutes short of survival." "Check again," Kade said. "Your time started when I arrived. It's been at least 5 minutes since then." The hunter checked its device again, more carefully this time. Its posture changed, shoulders dropping slightly. 12 hours and 7 minutes, it admitted. "You have survived the hunt." Kade allowed himself to relax slightly, though he remained wary. "So what happens now?" "Now we return to our ships. The challenge has been met. Your people are safe from the hunt. For now." A beam of energy surrounded Kade, and he felt the familiar sensation of transport. When his vision cleared, he was back on the horizon, collapsing onto the transporter pad as medical personnel rushed forward. "Get him to Med Bay," Dr. Park shouted, pressing a pressure bandage to Kade's shoulder wound. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, Kade saw Captain Wells enter the transporter room. "Did it work?" he asked weakly. "The Krivax ship is moving away," she confirmed. "Whatever you did down there, it worked." Kade managed a pained smile before the blood loss took its toll and darkness claimed him. He woke in the medbay 3 days later. His shoulder was heavily bandaged, and various medical devices monitored his condition. Dr. Park was reviewing his charts when he noticed Kade was awake. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Commander," the doctor said. "You gave us quite a scare." "The Krivax?" Kade asked, his voice rough. "Long gone. They left a message saying the hunt was concluded honorably." Park adjusted one of the Roman 4 drips. "You had multiple lacerations, a dislocated shoulder, 3 broken ribs, and enough toxins in your system from that swamp to kill a horse. It's a miracle you're alive." "Didn't feel like a miracle at the time," Kade admitted. "Captain Wells wants to see you when you're up to it." "Apparently word of your survival has spread. The Valerians are even more eager to meet you now," Kade groaned. "Great, more alien diplomacy. Rest first, save the galaxy later." After a week of recovery, Kade was cleared for light duty. His first task was to attend the meeting with the Valerian delegation that had been postponed during his ordeal with the Krivax. The Valerians were a tall, slender species with iridescent skin that shifted colors according to their emotional state. Their ambassador, Thez, greeted Kade with a formal bow. "Commander Fletcher, your reputation precedes you," Thez said, his skin rippling with patterns of blue and gold. "First the Araxians, now the Krivax. You have made quite an impression on the galactic community." "Not intentionally," Kade replied. "I was just trying to stay alive." "Nevertheless, your actions have created a unique opportunity. The Valerian Collective has long sought allies who understand the importance of balance between strength and wisdom. We believe humans may be such allies." The diplomatic discussions that followed were complex but productive. The Valerians offered trade agreements and technological exchange, significantly more favorable than what had been expected. After the meetings concluded, Captain Wells pulled Kade aside. "Do you realize what you've accomplished?" "We've been trying to establish relations with the Valerians for decades." "I just did what needed to be done," Kade said. "That's precisely it. You showed adaptability, resourcefulness, and courage. Those are qualities that many species in the galaxy respect." She handed him a data pad. "Earth Command has new orders for you. They want you to continue as our primary contact with these species." Kade reviewed the orders. "Ambassador to potentially hostile alien civilizations. That wasn't exactly in my career plan." "Sometimes we don't choose our paths, Commander. Sometimes they choose us." 6 months later, Kade stood once again in a diplomatic chamber, this time on the Valerian homeworld. Representatives from a dozen species were gathered for the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Treaty, a milestone in interstellar relations. Among the delegates was General Drozak, his massive form dominating one side of the chamber. The Araxian leader approached Kade before the ceremony. "Commander Fletcher," Drozak rumbled, "I see you continue to surprise the galaxy." "Just doing my job, General." Drozak's 6 eyes studied him intently. "The story of our first meeting has grown in the telling. Some say you possess supernatural strength. Others claim you have psychic abilities." "People like good stories," Kade replied with a shrug. "Indeed, but I know what truly happened. You used courage and quick thinking to turn a potentially deadly situation into a diplomatic opportunity." Drozak lowered his voice. "A skill perhaps more valuable than any blade." Before Kade could respond, a commotion at the chamber entrance drew everyone's attention. A group of Krivax hunters entered, led by a familiar figure, Hunt Master Grax. The room tensed. The Krivax rarely participated in diplomatic functions, preferring isolation to cooperation. Grax approached Kade, his posture formal. "Commander Fletcher, we meet again under more civilized circumstances." "Hunt Master," Kade acknowledged. I didn't expect to see the Krivax here. Your survival of our hunt has caused much discussion among our elders. It has been decided that the Krivax must adapt or be left behind in the changing galaxy." Grax's compound eyes gleamed. "We wish to learn from those who have proven themselves worthy." The treaty signing proceeded without incident, marking a new era of cooperation between formerly hostile species. Afterward, as the delegates mingled, Captain Wells joined Kade at the observation window overlooking the Valerian capital city. "Not bad for someone who was just trying to stay alive," she remarked. Kade gazed out at the alien skyline, its strange architecture glittering in the light of a red sun. "You know what's funny? When I first encountered Drozak and his blade, I was terrified. I just didn't show it. So what made you say you'd seen worse at home?" "Pure desperation. I grew up in rural Montana. The scariest thing I'd seen before joining the Alliance was my neighbor's rusty combine harvester." He chuckled. "Sometimes the best defense is making your opponent think you know something they don't." Wells smiled. "Well, whatever the reason, it worked, and now here we are making history." "Here we are," Kade agreed, watching as representatives of species that had been mortal enemies just months ago now conversed peacefully. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, filled with creatures evolved for different worlds and different purposes. But Kade had discovered something important during his trials. Beneath the differences of biology and culture, there were common threads that could bind diverse beings together. Respect, honor, courage, the willingness to understand rather than fear the unknown. As he observed General Drozak engaged in surprisingly cordial conversation with Hunt Master Grax, Kade reflected that perhaps humans did have something special to offer the galactic community after all. Not superior strength or technology, but a unique perspective born from their position as newcomers to the interstellar stage, in the face of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. Sometimes the most powerful weapon was simply a different way of seeing things. And if that perspective was occasionally accompanied by a bit of bravado and luck, well, that was just the human way. The next day, as the Horizon prepared to depart the Valerian homeworld, Kade received a package from General Drozak. Inside was a miniature replica of the Araxian ceremonial blade, along with a note that read simply, "For the human who has seen worse at home." Kade smiled as he placed the gift in his quarters. His journey among the stars had only just begun, but he had already learned its most important lesson in a universe of infinite diversity. Understanding was the truest form of strength. And sometimes, a little well-placed human bravado could change the course of galactic history.